everyone, this is Alaina from the Berwick Public Library. Now, recently, our children's librarian Shiloh shared a video about how April is National Poetry Month. And I have to be honest, I really don't like poetry. And I know I'm not alone. I know there's many people that don't like poetry. For me, I just get intimidated by it. I just have horrible memories of having to dissect every line of a poem in class when I was a kid, and it just ruined the whole experience of enjoying poetry for me. So I always hoped that when I got a little older I would suddenly appreciate it, but that hasn't happened yet. I still really don't like it. But I was surprised to discover how much I love novels written in verse. So whether you're a fan of poetry or, like me, you're not, I still think novels in verse are something that pretty much anybody can enjoy. So today I wanted to share 4 recommendations of books that I have read written in verse that I really love, that I think everybody will enjoy as well. Now, I've picked 2 that are written for a middle grade audience and 2 for a young adult audience. However, all 4 of them are something that I think adults will love as well. So the first book I want to talk about is called Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. Let's look at how beautiful that cover is. That's what caught my eye to begin with. I'd be lying if I said I didn't pick books by their cover. This one caught my eye and I knew right away I had to read it. And when I saw it was written in verse, that really sealed it for me. I knew I was going to like this one. This is a story that actually just got picked as part of the 2020 Maine Student Book Award list. This is a story centered around a young girl named Jude, and she is from Syria. And she and her mother are sent away from their family in Syria to live with her mother's brother and his family in Cincinnati because things are getting too dangerous at their home. So her father and her older brother stay behind while she and her mother, who is also pregnant, go live in Cincinnati with her uncle and his family. So this story deals a lot with Jude's feelings as an outsider in America, and her really just learning to accept her identity and really figure out more about who she is as an individual. She's really away from everything that's familiar to her. She's away from her family, she's away from her friends and her culture, and there's a lot of culture shock in coming to America, and it's interesting to see that from the reverse, so to speak. You know, we're not seeing culture shock of an American person going somewhere new. We're seeing what it's like for somebody to come into America and experience all these new things for the first time. And she doesn't always face good reception. She does make some friends, but there's also a lot of turmoil for her as well. She does deal with people that just make assumptions about her based on what she's wearing, based on her religion, based on where she's from, and we really see how that impacts Jude and how she feels about that. This is a great story to read along with your children if you are a parent, and this is something that I think a lot of kids are going to be picking up soon because it is a Maine Student Book Award winner, and those tend to be very popular with kids. There's a lot of great conversations you can have in here about tolerance and bullying especially. I highly recommend this book for all ages. It was excellent. The next book I want to talk about was a Maine Student Book Award list book for the previous year. And unfortunately, I don't see this one getting checked out as often as some of the other Maine Student Book Awards at the library, and that is Lifeboat 12 by Susan Hood. And I wonder if kids are maybe a little turned off at first when they see the verse format, because it does look like traditional poetry, even though it doesn't necessarily read that way. It reads more like a really fast prose. You can just fly through these books written in verse, which is why I always thought they were great, especially for reluctant readers. But this story is based on a true story, and it takes place during World War II, and we follow a young boy named Ken, and he is being sent from his home in London to Canada, and that's because the Nazis are bombing London and children are being sent away to Canada for safety. So he and a bunch of other kids are put on this really luxurious ocean liner, and they're sent on their way to Canada, and a few days into their trip their boat gets hit by a torpedo and it sinks. And many children did die. This is, like I said, this is based on a real story, so this did happen. And it was something I wasn't actually familiar with, so it was interesting after I was finished with the story to look up the real details. So Ken, though, our main character, gets into Lifeboat 12, And this is his story of survival along with almost 50 other people in the lifeboat and what they go through to make it through that ordeal. And at the end of the book, there are photos and more information about the real people that are in the story, including the real Ken and what happened to him after the story ends. Like I said, this is something that will inspire you to want to look up more information, and I really, really loved this, and all the people that I know that have picked this book up have enjoyed it. I just think, like I said, a lot of people shy away from it because they see the verse format and maybe they don't think it's something for them. But I assure you, if you give it a shot, you will love it. And this is a really fast-paced story. It will have you on the edge of your seat. And again, this was a Maine Student Book Award list winner for last year. And then the next two that I have are young adult books, and these are really geared towards an older audience, so I think older teens and adults would enjoy these as well. And the first one that I have here is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. And you may be familiar with Elizabeth Acevedo as an author. She also wrote a story called With the Fire on High, which I should have taken off my shelf to show you. The cover is very familiar. You've probably seen it at our library. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous cover. This one is beautiful as well, though. This is a story about a teenage girl named Xiomara, and she is really dealing with a lot of things internally. She is dealing with just, maturing and growing up, and also with kind of pushing back against her mother, who is really insistent that she follows all the strict rules of their church, and Xiomara really doesn't think that's for her. She's starting to question her faith and question her mother even, and she's questioning her friendships and questioning her relationships with people, and she's really dealing with a lot, and she finds an outlet for everything that she's dealing with by writing slam poetry. And I wasn't really familiar with slam poetry before this, but if you do pick this book up, I highly encourage you to listen to the audiobook, because Elizabeth Acevedo actually narrates it herself, and so you're hearing the words the way they're meant to be spoken, and you're hearing Xiomara's poetry the way it's meant to be spoken. And Elizabeth Acevedo herself actually is a slam poet as well. So even if you don't get the audiobook, you can still go on YouTube and find some videos of her performing her own poetry. So this author in general, this is a popular author with our book club that we do at the high school. We read With the Fire on High earlier this year and all really, really loved it. So I knew I had to pick up another book by her. And this is a great one. And then last, I have another popular book club book, and it's one that we have read with our adult book club as well as our teen book club, because it is that good, and I think I recommend it to everybody that comes into the library. And that is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. And I have to be honest, Jason Reynolds could write a grocery list, and it would probably be one of the best things you've ever read. He is incredibly talented. So this story is loosely based on A Christmas Carol, but also inspired by real events in Jason Reynolds' life. This is a story about the cycle of violence in gang communities, and basically putting an end to gun violence in children. And this is a story about a young boy named Will, and when the story opens, his older brother has just been shot and killed by a rival gang. And according to the rules in their community, it is now Will's job to avenge his brother by finding the person who killed him and shooting him. And you can see how this just becomes an endless cycle, because if Will shoots the person who killed his brother, then somebody's going to come avenge that guy and shoot Will, and somebody's going to avenge Will, and so on and so forth. And that's how this violence gets passed down from generation to generation, and nobody remembers what they're fighting for anymore or how it started. So this was based, or I should say inspired by, the fact that Jason Reynolds had a friend as a teenager who was killed as a result of gun violence and gang violence, and he and his friends had to have this conversation. Do we avenge our friend, or do we put an end to this right now? And he realized when he got older that there are many, many kids that deal with this in their daily lives that have never seen themselves represented before in the pages of a book, and could really use somebody telling them that you don't have to go down this path. There are other options. So this story takes place similar to A Christmas Carol taking place in one night. This takes place in the span of 1 minute. And we follow Will as he gets in the elevator on the 8th floor of his apartment building and travels down to the lobby. And on every floor, the elevator stops and a ghost from the past enters the elevator, and there's somebody that has been killed as a result of gang violence. And it could be because they themselves were part of a gang, or it could be because they were an innocent bystander. One girl gets killed in a drive-by shooting, so she, had no reason to be in the middle of everything. And really, they're just trying to get the message across to Will that, this decision that you make is going to change your entire life, and you need to think about this, and this is what happens if you make that decision. This is a really powerful story, and it's one that I think really needs to be talked about. It's one that I know from both book club experiences that everybody that's read it has gotten a lot more out of it the more they talked about it with somebody else. So I highly encourage you to pick this up, but have a read along with a friend or with your family, and have a conversation about it. All 4 of the books that I have mentioned are available on the Cloud Library app, and I think with the exception of Lifeboat 12, they're also available as audiobooks, so you're not limited to just the ebook versions. And of course, we do have them at the library when the time comes that you can join us again there. So I hope that you'll pick these books up, and if you do, or if you have read them before, let me know what you think. And if you have some recommendations of novels in verse, let me know, because I'm always looking for new ones to check out. So we'll see you later. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.